What's going on? Welcome to another episode of the Impel Forward podcast. I'm your host, Leon, and that's my co-host, Renee, right there.
Whoop whoop.
What's going on? We got a treat for us today.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Durham
Yes.
District Court Judge, Mr. Kevin Jones. Once a teacher, assistant public defender, an attorney, now a judge.
I love it. I love it.
We go bring him on right now.
Mm-hmm.
What's going on?
Hello. Good evening. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, no problem. Welcome to the Impel Forward podcast.
Yes. How's your Sunday going?
So far, so good. This is one of the Sundays where I actually had to bring some work home, so I'm working on orders for next week. But I'm enjoying my Sunday.
Now, is that a typical Sunday for you? Do you usually bring work home, or depending on the case, or?
Yeah, it depends on the week. My goal is to try to leave it at the office to make sure I give the quality time that my family is due. So I try to. That's a good way to try to keep some of the stress level down, is to try to leave work at work. Unfortunately, sometimes you can't do that, but the goal is to try to leave it at the office. And more often than not, I can do that as long as I prioritize my time and making sure I'm being efficient with what needs to get done at the courthouse.
Okay, before we get into this, and Leon's going to shake his head because I am an advocate.
Well, you're going to start right there. There you go.
Yep. Tell the people how it is important, how important jury duty is.
Oh, wow.
Mm-hmm.
We start right there.
Yes, we are. Because I preach this. I preach this, and Leon doesn't listen to me. So, Judge Jones, please tell the people how important jury duty is.
Well, it's super important. The Constitution allows or provides us with the right to be, when you're in court, to be judged by a group of your peers. And more often than not, you could end up in a situation where you could be facing a group that doesn't look like you. And so the only way that we can have a diverse jury pool from all different walks of life, from different racial and ethnic backgrounds, gender, sexuality, all different identifications. Like, we need to have a diverse group of people in the pool in order for our constitutional rights to be, fulfilled, because you can't have a jury of your peers if only a certain group of people decide that they want to serve. Funny story from when I was actually practicing law as a defense attorney. I was picking a jury one time, and there were so many of people that I felt would be good jury candidates for the type of case that I had, but they were finding ways. I can't serve because I don't believe in judging people, or I can't serve because I got to go to work tomorrow, which that's a valid reason, but you really have to try to balance it out and say, okay, well, am I doing my civic duty? I mean, this is a part of our process, and so that's a long way of answering. Let me just say it's extremely important.
Yeah, we had a discussion one day, and I told him, like, I really get upset with my friends. One, because I want to be picked for jury duty one day. That's a goal of mine. But two, because it is so important that it's our civic duty. And I was telling Leon on another discussion on one of our shows is that, you would want someone who is going to ask the questions that, need to be answering, especially about your case. You could be wrongfully convicted because you don't have a jury of your peers. When it's a person like me on there that's going to ask questions and maybe not necessarily sway someone, but have them think outside of their normal beliefs or traditions or whatever, how they feel, and look at it from a different perspective.
Right.
And so that was one of the
super
things.
Important.
Yeah. You started that off like I was against jury duty.
you weren't necessarily against it. You just didn't understand the importance of it, of how, or you weren't as passionate about it as I am.
Yeah, I ain't gonna lose friends that don't go. You said that you wouldn't be friends with people that didn't do jury duty.
Yeah, I stand by that.
See, that's what the issue I had. I was like,
I stand by
well,
that.
One of the clerks that handles jury duty, like whenever she brings the jurors in and for whatever reason, they're just kind of sitting in that waiting room waiting to get picked, she always tries to get one of the district court judges to come down and speak to the jurors and just kind of thank them for coming, and just let them know how important and how appreciated they are. Because I could see how it is, like sitting in that room, you're taking time off work, you had to find a babysitter, you're missing school, you might be missing, hours on the job. So I could see how it could be an inconvenience. And so you want to make sure that the people that are coming to serve are actually appreciated. So we try to make sure we go down and answer any questions they may have and just kind of thank them for coming.
And being a manager, you are paid for jury duty. That is a separate bucket of pay. So for people, I can't say every company, but majority of companies will still pay you your wage for jury duty if you appear. You actually, I believe, get two wages. I believe you get paid for jury duty and you get paid your regular work at the job. So, when I have friends, I have to work. I know where you work. You still get paid. So, yeah.
So what motivated you to pursue a career in law?
I've been thinking about that a lot lately, and I really trace it back to the position that I have in my family. Like I'm the oldest of 5 children. So I have 2 younger brothers and 2 younger sisters. And being that place as the oldest, I was often put in a position of watching them, or, I was a latchkey kid, letting everybody in the house, make sure everybody start their homework, and, being that leadership role in the house and amongst my siblings. And so I found myself a lot of times being that place of having to settle disputes between them, but also like being in a position of defending them if they got in trouble with my parents, like, hey, this is what was going on, da, 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 da. And almost being like that shield for my brothers and sisters. And then also within the family, but then outside of family, we grew up in Detroit, Michigan. And so, things were kind of rough and tumble in the city. And so, if something went down, I had to be the one to kind of step up and make sure that they were good. And so I took a lot of pride in that role. And I think I started to, as I got older, in my, elementary, junior high school days, I started to see lawyers, even though I didn't know any lawyers personally, from what I saw on television. My grandmother used to like Perry Mason. I used to like watch this show called LA Law. Just television shows and things you saw on TV. I saw lawyers as being defenders, like people who stood in the gap for other people and helped them solve problems. And so I think all of that background just kind of pulled me toward the legal field. And if you ask people, my family, aunts, uncles, they would always tell you, oh, he always said he was going to be a lawyer. So I've been saying that I was going to be a lawyer since I was, 10 years old on up. And so I think that's where it comes from. And it rang true. Like when I graduated from law school, my first job out of law school was as an assistant public defender. I worked as an assistant public defender, and that's all we did, when it's defending clients who were charged with different things. And so I took a lot of pride in trying to make sure that I let my clients know that, hey, I'm assigned to your case, me and you in this together. So it's me and you against the world kind of mentality that I had. And I think that comes from my background, family background.
And listening to you speak about that, this came to my remembrance. My daughter, she's 13 now. She said she wanted to be a lawyer, and I asked her why you want to be a lawyer. No, she said she want to be a lawyer, but she's not sure because lawyers have to lie. I don't know where she got that from or what she saw or whatever, but that's what she said.
Right. Yeah, I heard that a lot, and I had a conversation with my pastor one time because he was in the pulpit one time and said, I used to want to be a lawyer. But they told me I couldn't be a lawyer because how you gonna be a preacher and you're lying? Because lawyers lie. And I was just like, hey.
So why do you think they have that? I mean, that negative, I guess, title,
right?
Lawyers.
Well, right? I think it's just like any profession, whether you're you're a police officer, a lawyer, you're a doctor, a nurse, whatever profession you are, you're still a person. You're still a human being, and we know human beings, they might not be as honest as they need to be, but that doesn't mean it's just lawyers.
Right.
There are doctors and preachers, even. There are a lot of people who lie and are not the most ethical. So you're going to find that whatever profession you're in. But I think what happens in the world of law with lawyers and legal profession, you have people seeking out attorneys when they're in trouble, when they are in bad circumstances, especially in the criminal context. And so when you have folks coming to lawyers in those situations, they want to hire the lawyer, or they want a lawyer that's going to advocate for their position. Now, their position could be wrong, but when you hire that lawyer, or that lawyer was assigned to your case, you're not looking for a lawyer who's going to advocate for the other side. Hey, you're supposed to be defending me. And so I think because of that, whoever's on the other side is saying, hey, that lawyer's lying. When that lawyer is not necessarily lying, that lawyer is advocating for a position. Like, this is the position that they're advocating for, and it's the position of their client. And so that's probably where it comes from, because in the legal field, you always have two different sides.
Right.
And so, of course, one side is going to say, no, I'm right. And the other side is wrong. And whatever they're saying is not true. And the other side is saying, wait a minute, no, our side is right. And the other side, what they're telling you, judge, is not true. And so that's where you have the balance, and that's where the judge sits and trying to determine, this person has a perspective and this person has a perspective. And then you have to apply the law to each one of those perspectives. And that's where you come with the judgment. So I don't know if that's the best answer, but that's my perspective on why lawyers get a bad rap. It's because usually it's someone who's had a negative experience with a lawyer, who kind of has that feeling that all lawyers are tricksters and they're trying to, and I don't think that's the case. It's just some bad ones have given folks a bad name.
Yeah. Also,
and television.
Yes, I was going to say television plays a major part in that as well.
Yeah, exactly.
Now, you were telling us your journey from, to being a public defender. You were, I'm going to assume, a mediator to your family. You played mediator, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Sounds like you were a protector. Sounds like you took it a step further and you was actually the magistrate as well. Once you got to, you finished law school and you chose to be a public defender, was that always the goal? Was that instead of any other different fields, was it always, being a public defender? You don't want to go the civil route?
Right. No, that was not the plan. My plan going back, like I said, I always wanted to be a lawyer, but I didn't know any lawyers. So all I knew about law was what I saw on television. And then once I finished up college was finishing up college, got to my senior year, it was time to apply to law school, but I didn't know what to do. And so it was actually a young lady that I was seeing at the time who was planning on going to law school too. And she's like, oh, well, you need to take the LSAT. I don't know. Well, what's the LSAT? I'm like, oh, you got to take the test. So I took the test, didn't do as well as I wanted to. And so I applied and got put on the waiting list. I got put on the waiting list for the 2 law schools that I applied to. And so I was like, wow, what am I going to do now? I've always said I want to be a lawyer. Now I'm right here at it. And I don't know if I'm going to get in. And so I found this opportunity for this program called Teach for America. And so I ended up joining Teach for America. And that program brought me to North Carolina in Rocky Mount. So I ended up becoming a classroom teacher. I taught 5th grade in Rocky Mount for 3 years. And during that time as a classroom teacher, I was able to build a different set of skills, like working with parents and working with students and putting together lesson plans and all of those kinds. So I added that to my repertoire. And I think after I did that for 3 years, I applied to NCCU School of Law and I got in. And so I gave that backstory because coming out of law or going into law school, I was like, okay, I'll take my education experience and parlay that with my law experience, and I'll become an education lawyer. I'll work for teachers. I'll work for teacher unions. I'll advocate for children in school. And so that was the plan coming out of law school. But when I started applying for jobs and realizing that, hey, I got a stack of rejection letters like this thick, and realized that getting into education law is a very specialized area. And they don't really take lawyers, or they don't take law students coming straight out of law school and you become an education lawyer. They want you to go and have experience and get trained, and then you kind of backdoor your way into a position. And so, to be brutally honest and full transparency, I was at a point I needed a job. So once I was applying everywhere, and so it just shows you, and I'm a man of faith, and it just shows you how God works. He just puts work for me, put things in place. And so as soon as I got that, passed the bar exam, as soon as I got my results, the first job that called me, he called and left we had an answer machine to show you how old, how long ago that was. He called and left the voice message on my answer machine, was like, hey, you see you passed the bar exam, I want you to come in for an interview, and the rest was history. So I didn't know it at the time, but I took to criminal defense work. I took to it like a fish to water, and it really resounded with what was going on in my life and experiences that I had. And so my personality, all of that worked to my benefit as an assistant public defender. And so that's how I just kind of took to it.
So once you, after being a public defender, so what is the difference between a public defender? Well, y'all still are lawyers, correct?
Yeah, true. I'm glad you asked that, because yes, a public defender is a lawyer.
Right.
And some people that talked about stereotypes, public defenders do have a negative stereotype. Some people feel like they're not quote unquote real lawyers.
Right. Or you
not
don't really
quote
care.
Unquote, right. You're a public pretender. I've heard that. Public pretender. You're not a real lawyer. You work for the state. You and the DA work together. You're just trying to put me in jail. Like, all of those negative connotations come into play. But really, and there's the public defender, not every county, but many counties in North Carolina have a public defender's office that's led by a public defender. That's the one at the top. And then up under him or her, they will have assistant public defenders. All lawyers, but we do get paid by the state, but we don't work with the district attorney. There are two separate offices. One office is assigned to prosecute cases. The other office is assigned to defend people who are charged with criminal offenses. But the public defender's office is set up for people to have representation when you don't have the funds to hire your own private counsel and you're charged with a criminal offense. Anytime you're charged with a criminal offense and you're facing actual jail time, there's a possibility that you could be incarcerated. Our Constitution allows for representation. And so if you don't have the money to hire your own lawyer, an attorney can be appointed to you. So that's where the public defender comes in.
All right. So when did you know that you wanted to start your own law practice? How long did it take? Was that something you was already pursuing, or as you was a public defender started thinking like, oh, no?
Right. Well, no. I'm gonna give a politically correct answer.
Okay.
Oh goodness.
I'm gonna give two answers. I'm gonna give the politically correct answer, and then I'm gonna give the transparency answer.
Okay.
The politically correct answer was or is that I had built up enough experience and training. I handled all the juvenile law cases that juvenile offenders who came through the office. I was handling all those cases. I started handling domestic violence cases. I started handling lower level felony cases in Superior Court. I had a few trials, picked a couple juries, and I felt like I had the experience to where, you know, I kind of hit the glass ceiling, so to speak, as far as development as an assistant public defender. And so it was at that point where it was time for me to branch out and take that experience to the next level. That's the politically correct answer. The non-PC answer is I thought I was about to get fired. So
Really?
Now, why did you think that?
You know that was going to be the next question.
I thought I was going to get fired. And I wanted to step out on my own before I wanted to say, well, let me leave before they throw me up out of here. But I had become a little aggressive in how I was representing my clients. And I think I started to ruffle some feathers with some of the judges that I appeared in front of. Because, I mean, I really took it to heart that, listen, this is my client. We're in this together. Like, this person, we're standing shoulder to shoulder. And so I'm going to fight. I'm going to fight. And I think in my youth, maybe I was taking it to the edge. And judge called my boss in and was like, hey, listen, you need to get him. So I got talked to a couple times, and he needs to rein it in.
Was that a case of them feeling like you represent your client too much? Would they didn't want that, or would you?
No, I think it was a sense of I think they may have felt like I was being a bit disrespectful. Like
so how many times were you
a line that lawyers have to walk? Well, that was the only time I felt like it was getting close. And that was one time enough to where I was like, you know what? I might need to have my own practice so I can kind of do what I need to do.
Would that make a difference?
What I feel needs to be done.
Would that still make a difference? You ruffling feathers with judges, right? And then you start your own practice, still under your name. Is that different than being a public defender? Meaning that would judges kind of give you a little bit more slack, per se?
No, I wouldn't say that, but I felt like if I'm working for myself, then I'm not worried about firing myself. Like, I'm not gonna fire myself, you know. So I can go in there and have the freedom. If a judge gets upset with me, they get upset with me. When I'm as an assistant public defender, you know, you still have a boss. You have a boss that you have to. There's layers to it, exactly, and so you have to make sure that you are going by the philosophy of the office and making sure that the way you are handling your cases aligns with the philosophy of your boss. Basically, that's the easiest way of saying it. So I think I had got to a point in my training and my experience where I needed to spread my wings. And you know, sometimes you have to step out on your own to spread your wings like you need to. It's almost like if you have children, once your children get to a certain age and they're like, you know, they want to stay out a little later, they want to do their own thing. But you can't do your own thing and you living in my house, right?
Right.
If you want to do your own thing, you need to go get your own house. And so that's kind of what I did.
Judge, you're going to ruffle some feathers with gentle parenting with that last statement you made there.
So you was
Hey,
you had your own practice for what, 15 years, correct?
yeah,
Can you hear me?
it's a long time.
15. Now, was that in
Yes.
Durham or Rocky Mount?
I can hear you. Durham.
Okay.
The Raleigh-Durham area, the triangle.
Okay.
Wow,
So
15 years. I hadn't, yeah, that was before I even moved here. It's exciting.
how old are you, Judge?
I'll be 50 in May. So I'm 49. You see, it was hard for me to get it out.
49 years young, this judge is.
That's right. That's right.
And you're doing it for a minute. So how is it when it comes to speaking to, do you do speaking engagement, anything like that? Now, do you talk to young Black men occasionally, or do you get out and do that?
I do. Whenever I get a chance. I'm a Sunday school teacher, so I teach the teen class for the Sunday school, and I still try to get out to different schools. I've been over to Southern High School and spoke to a class, a marketing class over there, and it's usually all I'm doing is telling my story and how I got to where I am.
All right. So what is your take on do you think it's still mass incarceration?
Oh, that's a good question.
You said, what's my take on mass incarceration?
Do you think that's still going on?
I believe so. I mean, our justice system, it can work, but I can't say that it's working 100% the way it's supposed to. And that was one of the reasons why I felt like, even though I had been doing my own practice for 15 years and doing my part, that's why I felt the call to come to the bench, because, I can't sit back on the sidelines and just point out all of the flaws within the system if I'm not willing to take the training and experience that I have to be a part of the solution. And so that's what I felt like becoming a judge. I could bring my experiences and try to bring some balance to our system.
And another reason why you should go to jury duty.
Exactly.
I have a question. Have you ever had, or I would say, how many times have you had to override a jury decision?
I have not. And so the way our system is set up in North Carolina, so we have district court, and we have superior court,
right? And
then we have the court of appeals, and then you would have the North Carolina Supreme Court. So at the district court level, as far as on criminal matters, at the district court level, you're not entitled to a jury trial at the district court level.
Oh, okay.
All bench trials.
Wow. Okay.
When you take, if it's a felony, all felonies for the most part are disposed of in superior court. So if you're charged with a felony, then you have the option of having a jury trial if you're charged with a felony. But if you're charged with a misdemeanor, you're going to have a bench trial. That's just with one judge making a decision. Right. But if the judge finds you guilty, then you can appeal that judge's decision and take it up to superior court. Then, even though you're charged with a misdemeanor, you still can have a trial in front of a jury with your misdemeanor charge, as long as it started in district court and you got a decision in district court that you weren't happy with. Now, on the civil side, you can select to have a jury trial if you're not charged, but if you have like a personal injury case, somebody hit you you got a broken leg, you can, at that point, you sue that person. You can elect to have your trial in front of one judge or a jury, even though it's still in district court.
Oh, okay.
So to answer your question, I haven't had that wouldn't be my role as a district court judge to, on a criminal matter, to overrule what a jury has said. And I haven't I haven't presided over a jury trial in a civil matter. So I haven't had that opportunity to have a situation where a jury renders a decision and for whatever reason feel like that decision is not appropriate.
But you're going to get there because that's the ultimate goal, right?
What, to have a jury trial or to be in superior court?
Be a superior court judge.
I don't know. You're the second person that's asked me about that, about whether my intention is to eventually get to superior court. I'm not going to totally rule that out at this point. I just really feel like I got a year and 9 months under my belt as a district court judge, and it's still so much more that I need to learn and do. So I'm really focused on that right now.
Okay. Hey, once you get to that ceiling, he'll know.
Now, do you have a mentor that you kind of that provides guidance, or you're able to go and talk to them kind of in the similar field, or maybe retired at all,
right,
that you look up to?
Yes, definitely. I have quite a few. I've been blessed to have quite a few superior court judges, district court judges that I have admired because I've appeared in front of them over the years, and I've watched their careers develop. And that's the one thing I could say about Durham. I really enjoyed Durham, and specifically the Durham County Courthouse, is because there's so many good people working within the court system that you can talk to, that are willing to share knowledge. As long as you have to be humble enough to receive it. You can't be afraid of getting constructive feedback. And I feel like as long as you're open to that, there's plenty of people that I can lean on and give me that advice.
Right.
Speaking of being open, go ahead.
Go ahead. I'll let you get it out.
I was going to say, kind of speaking on being open and, honest, how important is it for an individual that is, has allegedly committed a crime to be open and honest with your public defender?
Well, I used to tell my clients that, listen, we're going into a battle together. And if we're going into a battle together, we have to be on the same page. If we're going into a battlefield and you already know that there's danger around the corner, but you're not going to tell me about it, then you're setting us both up to be harmed. And so that's one way of trying to impress upon the clients that if you want me to do the job that I've been appointed to do, that you've hired me to do, I can't do my job effectively if you're not willing to share. Now, that's on the one side. The other side of it is, I had to be understanding and know, and I think it falls on the lawyers and the public defender to make sure that you've built the connection with the client so they can open up to you. Because like I said earlier, we have people who we're asking them to open up to us and tell us about what could have been the most embarrassing, traumatizing moment in their life. Something that they are maybe ashamed of or scared about, traumatic for them. And you're asking them to tell me what happened. Like, they don't want to tell their mama. They don't want to tell nobody. They want to keep it. They want to keep that to themselves. So much so that sometimes I think in their mind, they make it up in their head that didn't happen. Even though it's a video showing like that did happen. But there's like a disconnect because they just truly can't face it because it was so embarrassing and so something they're so ashamed of that they can't just express it. They can't verbalize it. And so I spent a lot of time when I was first meeting clients, like establishing that connection, you know, sharing with them to try to make them, to get them to understand that I do care about this case. I do care about you. I care about this case. I want to make sure that you don't get quote unquote railroaded. I want to make sure that you are, you know, you protected along this road. But I can't do it if we don't have this, we're not in it together. So yeah, it's both ways. It's on the client to be transparent, but it's also on the lawyer to make sure that they've created an environment, they've created a setting in which the client feels comfortable enough to open up and share.
I'll come back to my other question. You talking. How do you defend someone that you know is guilty and they've told you everything they did and what they've brought up on charges are really true? How do you defend that? What do you say?
Right. So it's a couple ways you have to approach it. You approach it based on the client. So one way I approach it is making sure that the client understands, because, okay, I'll break it down like this. That example, I had a client that come to me that may have been court, they may be sitting in jail, and they're like, I did it, just go ahead, work me out a plea so I can get out of here. I know I did it, just work me out a plea so I can get out of here. But I've already looked at the police report, and I've already seen that there's some problems with the case. The witness in the case, I found out through my research that the witness in the case died a week ago. So if the witness died a week ago, why would I let my client plead guilty? Or why would my client say, oh, I just want to plead guilty so I can get out of here. Just let me plead guilty. I'm like, so in that situation, he did it, but is he guilty? So there's the disconnect. I try to get clients to understand that there's a difference between you did it and being found guilty. Like the you did it standard may be right here, but in order to find somebody guilty, you still have to stack that evidence up, because guilty and not guilty, that's what the judge says and that's what the jury says. You did it, that's between you and the victim, the witness, and your God. Like that's who did it. Like we know, because I wasn't there. The judge wasn't there. The jury wasn't there. Guilty or not guilty, that's done in the courtroom based off evidence. And the easiest way to explain it, or to make it even more clear, is there are people that are sitting in jail right now. They're sitting in jail right now. They've been on, let's make it even more clear. There are people that have been on death row. They went to trial and they were found guilty. But the DNA evidence came out some years later after they spent all those years in jail. The DNA evidence came out, and guess what? They didn't do it. So you see, there's a difference between guilty and you did it. Two different things. Guilty is a legal standard. That's something that happens in the courtroom based off evidence. I did it is something totally separate. And the opposite is true too. There are people who did it. They went to trial, jury heard the evidence, and guess what? They were found not guilty. That didn't mean they didn't do it. That just meant they went to trial and they were found not guilty because the evidence wasn't there. So
do you think some people kind of give up a little too soon when they feel like they did it, or, you know, the scare tactics from the, you know, the police or the DA or whomever, they kind of give up a little bit too easy?
Yeah, I think that's part of it sometimes. I just really think before you decide to plead guilty or not guilty, you really need to have sound advice from someone who maybe not be like a loved one or somebody that can be a neutral observer. And that's why I try to be, try to wear different hats. When I was a lawyer practicing law, would wear the hat of, look, sometimes I have to tell you some things that you may not want to hear, but that's after we've established that rapport and that connection. Once you establish the rapport and the connection, then you can switch to hats and say, okay, look, now I got to tell you the real. Now I know you're saying you didn't do it. I know you're saying you didn't do it, but let me put that to the side for a minute and let's look at this evidence. Mm-hmm. They got a videotape, they got eyewitness, and they got 10 other convictions for the same thing in the past. So you saying I didn't do it, I didn't do it, I didn't do it. Okay, we can go to trial on it. When we go to trial, it's not going to be about whether you did it or not. It's going to be about what this evidence is. So do you want to go down the road of I didn't do it, so I'm pleading not guilty, or do you want me to? You want to put the I did it, I didn't do it. You want to put that to the side for a minute, and let's think logically. Like, okay, what is the best possible outcome? I could probably work out probation for you, or do some community service and pay a fine, and that might be the end of it. But if we go to trial and you're found guilty, then you might be looking at 150 days in jail. So I try to lay it all out, so to let the client make the decision, you know, based off the facts and not different opinions.
You explaining all that, you know who I thought about?
Who? O.J.
Simpson. Guilty, not guilty. You ain't got to answer that, but that's what I was thinking about. O.J. did it.
That's one of them cases where, you know, it's all about the evidence. Right. Based off the evidence, I wasn't there. I don't know.
I mean, he said it. He even gave an example. He's like, you're saying you did it, but the proof, the person, the eyewitness or whomever is dead, but you're saying you did it, but the person is dead. What you want to do?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he's not telling you directly, but he's giving you, you know, he's kind of handing it to you on a platter for you to say, that's all they had, and he's dead.
Mm-hmm. So look, what changes would you like to see in the judicial system, if any?
In the judicial, I think we need to have more representation for people who are not charged with criminal offenses. Like, I don't know if I made that clear. You can only get a court-appointed lawyer if you're charged with a crime, right? Mm-hmm. But let's say you want to file for custody of your child.
Yeah.
You can't get a public defender for that. You have to either represent yourself or find some money from somewhere to hire a lawyer. And the family law arena is very expensive. So I preside in family court now. Every other week I'm in family court. I'm actually going back into family court on Monday. And I would say 80 to 90% of those folks that come into that courtroom are representing themselves. And so you have something that's so important as custody rights, and you're in there trying to figure it out on your own without a lawyer. And so I really feel like one way to improve our judicial system, our justice system, is to find a way to have more representation for clients when they don't have the funds to hire attorneys, because these laws, our justice system is pretty complicated. Like trying to navigate, you know, the rules, the regulations, the paperwork, it can become very overwhelming very quickly. And so I spend a lot of time, I can't give legal advice when I'm sitting on the bench, but I can explain the process. I try to explain the process and be as neutral as possible as I'm explaining the process, because you don't want to make one side feel like you're giving help to the other. So I try to make sure I explain it in basic detail, basic format, so people can digest it. So
is that what you was telling when we first met at the meetup, and you was telling me that you try to teach from the bench? That's something you're talking about?
Yeah, that's exactly right. So I rely on my teaching background. Like even when I was practicing, I would teach. When I was practicing law as an attorney, as an assistant public defender, even private practice, every time a client sat down in my office and we're going over their case, I was treating it like it was a lesson, like a full-blown lesson plan, like explaining step by step, these are the elements of the crime. And I'm drawing charts and diagrams and visual aids to try to help people understand. I take that same approach from the bench, trying to explain to the people that appear in front of me when they don't have lawyers, you know, this process, just because it's so, like, in the words they told us, like, you try to stay away from using these lawyer words when you have people that don't have lawyers. You got to try to make sure that they understand. And I always check for understanding as well. Do you have any questions? Do you understand what we're getting ready to do? And people, when they come to court, they're always nervous and anxious and just angry. And so I try to break through some of that first. Good morning, such and such. How are you doing today? All right. My name is Kevin Jones. I'm the district court judge for today. And try to break the ice a little bit just to make sure that, and I think more of that needs to be done as well, as far as improving. And we having judges who are more have more people skills.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. More people skills, more compassionate. Exactly.
Do they usually, like, people who's on the other end of your teaching, do they usually receive it pretty well when they're in the wrong and they understand where you're coming from, trying to explain it to them?
More often than not, than not, as long as I don't feed into their anger or feed into the negativity. And, you know, I'm a person just like everybody else. When you could tell when somebody's giving you that energy, like, and I have to consciously say, no, he's upset. Just because he or she is upset, that doesn't mean I have to get upset with them, you know, because if you buy into that, you know, it creates an environment. It creates an environment that causes even more hostility. And so, but for the most part, if I take a moment, and if somebody's like just real upset and they can't understand what's going on, I try to give them some space to express it. As long as they're not yelling and cursing and going, and sometimes they get, and I say, okay, wait a minute now. You can't use that kind of language. I'm going to listen to you. Let me hear you out. And I'm like really listening. And then, okay, all right, now let me answer your question. And if I start doing it, then I'm like, wait a minute now. When you were talking, I didn't interrupt you because I wanted to hear what you got to say. I need you to listen to me now, and let me give you my perspective. And this is what's getting ready to happen. You know, and people just want to be heard.
Yeah.
People just want to be heard. And if they understand that I'm listening to them and I'm taking into consideration what they're saying, even though I may not give you what you're asking for, I did hear you and I considered it.
Right. How much time you got?
I probably got about another 10, 15 minutes.
Okay. What is your take on, so I work in the barbershop. I'm a barber. Mm-hmm. And for years, I've been hearing a lot of complaints about child support from fathers and how they're treated in the court systems. Do you think it's fair? And I've seen a lot of podcasts talking. I've even seen different lawyers talk about how wrong, how the justice system is towards fathers when it comes to child support. I don't know the ins and outs though.
I think there are some isolated incidents where fathers have gotten, you know, a bad deal in child support court. For instance, so you have a situation where, you know, father's paying child support, but then finds out that the child is not his. who's been paying child support for all these years, finds out the child's not his, he's not getting that money back.
Right. And I seen somebody they still have to pay it.
Well, he had to, yes. So yes. So even a situation where father, there's a married couple, right? Married couple. They have 2 children together. They have a 3rd child. They find out that the 3rd child is not his, but the child was conceived or born during the marriage. He signed the birth certificate. If the mother files for child support, he's not just paying child support for 2 children. He'll be paying child support for 3 children. Even though the 3rd child is not biologically his by the DNA, he still has to go through the steps of delegitimizing that child and filing the right paperwork and doing all of that. But you know, if let's say he was already on child support, he's gonna have to keep paying child support until that process is done, right? So and that's why I was saying earlier, because of situations like that, it would be better or beneficial if there were more lawyers available to help someone in those types of situations. But I think those are isolated incidents that get really blown up. What really is happening is, and I'm trying to step lightly here, my experience is that because individuals are disappointed, upset, angry with the person that they had a child with, they are resentful for having to pay money because they feel like I'm paying money to her and I don't like her, or I don't like what she gonna do with the money, or she cheated on me, or she's a bad person. Like all of that comes into play, and they're like, oh, I shouldn't have to pay. And I think the other side is true too. Like for women who are seeking child support, they're like, well, I'm not going to let you see this child until you start paying child support. And that's not right either. They're 2 separate things. Like some men are like, well, I'm not going to pay child support because she won't let me see the child. And then some moms are like, well, I'm not going to let you see the child because you ain't paying no child support. There's 2 separate issues. There's child support and there's custody and visitation. Though you can't use one as a rationale for not doing the other. That's something that we really got to make. That's not being spread throughout the barbershop. We need to get that spread into the barbershop as well. You cannot stop paying child support because you're not seeing the child. And moms, maybe we say spread that through the hair salon. You cannot stop the child from seeing his father because the father ain't paying child support. I know it may be frustrating on either side, but the 2 are separate because guess who's hurting in both instances?
The child. So let me ask you this, now that we evolved, right? Because when you think about child support, it's always the dad paying, right? Are you starting to see now where women are being more required to pay child support to the father than probably, I would say, back in the day? Because I know growing up, it was all I heard from my, aunts and everybody was, he needs to pay child support. But
I ain't never heard of one
where women are making more money than men, and men are getting custody of the children these days.
There are situations, I have presided over a few situations where moms have been ordered to pay child support, but it's still heavily the other way. But what's been happening more often than not, though, is nobody's paying child support because there's a shared custody type situation. Because the child is with one parent 7 days, the other parent 7 days, or they got like a 2-2-3 schedule where the child is kind of going back and forth between both households. So nobody is really paying child support because the child is spending equal time with both parents. Sometimes that's happening more prevalent these days as well. Like I have seen more fathers stepping up to the plate and being more active with custody with the children, and that's a positive thing. Excuse me.
And you say you took some work home, meaning paperwork, right?
Well, orders.
Orders.
And what happens in family court is I'll listen to a trial. Like I had a trial. The trial might have been, 4 or 5 hours. So I'm taking notes, listening to the evidence, objection, sustained, overruled. All right, just taking notes and hearing all that. So at the end of the trial, I can't give a ruling because I got notes to look at. I got exhibits to look at. So I have to take some time to digest all of those things. And I'll tell the people, okay, come back in 2 weeks and I'll give you my ruling. So what I'm working on this weekend is a ruling that I have to give tomorrow. And I had to, right before I got on the call with you guys, I was going over the recording from that hearing and looking at my notes and preparing my ruling and what the custody situation is going to be and who's going to have custody Monday through Friday and who's going to get the weekend. And
so you're working on things like that.
Oh yeah. That's one of the biggest things. So a part of my job is I manage a group of I have a team that mediates foreclosures, and then I have another team that appear at contested trials and depositions. So one of the hardest things I hear, or one of the things that frustrates me the most, is when they provide me with their outcome and they're like, the judge reserved the ruling. And I'm like, why? He should have known. He should have known. Why didn't you just rule? And oh my God, when I tell you it grinds my gears, grinds my gears. But I understand, depending on, how long. But our trials aren't as long as what you're saying, which you have the right? When it's 5, 6 hours, the objections, you want to hear, these are like 1 hour, maybe less than that. And I'm just like, what you mean?
Right.
Why?
So what I will do sometimes is give like a temporary little holdover ruling to get them to, like this one. I heard it back on August the 12th. And so I was like, okay, well, it's going to take me about 2 weeks to get this together. And they needed something in place to kind of get them to September. So I was like, all right, well, I'm going to do this memorandum. That's just going to be a holdover until that date. Based on what I've heard so far, this is what's going to be the order until we come back. And then I'll give a full ruling. So sometimes I'll do it that way, especially in cases where you have people who are self-represented. They don't have lawyers. And you got a mom and dad, and the dad hasn't seen the child in 3 months. And it's going to take me another 2 weeks to do the order. I'll do a little memorandum right there while I'm sitting there. Say, okay, y'all give me a few minutes. I'll type it up and say, okay, we're going to do joint legal custody, joint physical custody. Dad gets to see the child every other weekend. Dad's first weekend is going to be this weekend, starting whatever. Boom. Y'all come back on this day and I'll give you the full ruling. That's going to be like, the little memorandum is like 1 page, but my rulings are like, the full orders can be like 8 to 10 pages. So that'll give them something to hold them over until the end.
You're one of the good ones.
So have you ever, bringing work home, as far as emotionally or mentally, throughout your years of working law and being a judge, have you ever brought, not paperwork, but just mentally brought a case home that's got you kind of down, or you worried about a certain person or anything like that?
Definitely. When I was assistant public defender and I was handling all of the juvenile cases that came through our office, those cases were toughest because you got kids, under the age of 16. Back then, you were considered an adult as far as criminal prosecution at 16. It just raised the age. But back then, so you'd have 13, 14-year-old charged with a serious sexual assault or some type of serious, shooting or something crazy. And I go to the detention center and I see them and they're like, like my kids, little, just small. Their mind is, they're still young. They're charged with doing some bad stuff, but they're kids. And so those were the ones that kind of sat with me when I was in private practice, and when I was assistant public defender. But now that I'm on the bench, on the one hand, there's more cases. So there's more crazy stuff like going on. You got families, kids fighting and being hurt in the home, sexually assaulted. It got all kinds of stuff going on. But one thing I can say is that it's so many, you know, that I don't really have time to like really let it sink all the way in, because I got to move to the next one. Like, okay, where's the next one? The next one, next one. All the cases that are on the docket that day, I have to deal with. Whereas when I was in private practice or as an assistant public defender, I had my case. And so I had to really dig down deep into my case. So on the one hand, that there's a little difference. I mean, it's a different type of stress, I would say. Now it's more of the stress of having to make the decision, you know, and what effect the decision that I'm going to make is going to have on the folks moving forward. When I was in private practice or as an assistant public defender, the stress was more like I said, I'm in it with them, like having to get into the deep, dark depths of whatever they were going through to really make the best case for them in front of court. And so it's just different stress. I can't say one is worse than the other or better than the other. It's just different.
Okay.
Well, I know you're short on time, but I do want to ask, you said you have children. Does any of your kids want to go down the same path as their fathers? We have some future lawyers in the family.
Well, I have my oldest is 26. She's like, no, she's always been like against it. She's actually, her major is public health. So I think she's kind of going down the social work, the community organizing kind of route.
Kind of close, kind of.
Yeah. So it's some of it, and then my son, he's he's going into high school. So he's starting to say like, maybe I want to be a lawyer. Maybe he keeps saying he wants to be a politician. So, because I think he got involved in a campaign. Like, you know, he did I let him do some speeches at a couple of my campaign events. And so I think he might have the bug, just being involved and being around it. And my youngest daughter is academically gifted as she is. She's always talking to me. She wants to be a fashion designer. So, so I don't know. We'll see. Nice. But I'm not going to push them either way. I think they'll all be great.
Right. So what advice would you give the upcoming people who's studying law, want to be lawyers, judges? What advice would you give them?
I would say work on your people skills, man. Like you really, if you're going to I guess depending on the type of law you want to get into, but if you want to own your own practice, you want to be assistant public defender, you want to be a judge, you want to be a prosecutor, you want to work with the people, you want to be representing clients, or you want to sit on the bench and listen to people and their issues and come up with a decision, you got to work on your people skills, man. You really have to, know how to interact with people, know how to have good eye contact, listen, work on your listening skills. That I think will take you a long way, because I know some excellent lawyers, like brilliant legal minds, but nobody is going to give them any money to represent them in court because they don't have those soft skills that you would need to make that connection. Like, I'm not saying they wouldn't be able to get a good result, but they're not going to be able to let the client feel like they're going to be able to get a good result, if that makes sense. You know what I'm saying? Like, they're not going to be able to present in a way that the person feels a connection to them. So I would say, if you want to get into this type of work, you want to be in the courtroom doing trials and, representing clients where they paid you money to do a task for them, you really need to, you can't be shy. You're going to have to step out of that. You're going to have to step out of that and work on your people skills.
Right. One more thing. Voting. Voting. Let's talk about that real quick. The importance of voting. I guess encouraging people to vote, I guess. And I think I told you that I know people get tired of me hearing this, but when I came home from prison, I didn't vote until Obama was running, and because we're taught or told that we can't vote, and then later on you learn that you can vote after you were off parole or probation or whatever, and that's when I learned. And I only voted because he was black. I didn't know anything about politics. Still learning, still listening, trying to get more involved. So talk about the importance of voting.
Yeah, the biggest, I think we all hear about the presidential elections and how, you know, they get all the attention, you know. But the importance really lies at the local level.
Yep.
You know, your mayor, your city council, your county commissioners. These are the people that make decisions that affect you when you step out of your door. You know, the trash collectors, you know what I'm saying, the roads, the schools, the school board, like where your children go to school, like how much money comes to your school versus the school around the way. So that's where the rubber hits the road. And then especially, oh my God, in the judicial elections, they're the ones that are kind of on the back of the ballot. Like some people they fill out the front and they turn it in. They don't even turn it over because that's where the judge races are.
Yep.
The judges are the races. Well, they're not the sexy ones, but they're the ones that have so much power and authority because, like it or not, everybody's going to end up standing in front of the judge at some point. Maybe not a criminal matter. It could be a civil matter. It could be a child custody matter, some other family matter. And you want to make sure that the people that you are appearing in front of, or your parents are going to appear in front of, your children are going to appear in front of, there are people who reflect the views that you may have, or the people who reflect how you would want your parent, your child, yourself to be treated. And so that's one of the major reasons why we got to get out here and participate. So at least to say that you put your part in. And then on the other side, like those are the local judges, but then the North Carolina Court of Appeals, the North Carolina Supreme Court, those races are important as well. Because those judges are the ones who interpret the law. And when the laws get passed and they end up in front of those judges, they say, nope, that law is unconstitutional. It needs to be rewritten. It's not going to be enforced. So everything connects. Everything connects. And if you decide not to participate, then you can't,
complain.
Yeah. I was trying to say, I'm trying to find it.
I'm going to say it for you. You can't complain.
If you don't participate, you can't complain. Or you can, but you really.
For what? You didn't
right.
You don't participate.
So you got the outcome that you handed to somebody else.
Right. That's exactly right.
Now, what about the executive level in voting?
Yeah, it's the same thing, but as far as for presidential elections, those are important, especially now. We got a lot at stake, but I think if you can see or latch on to the importance of at the local level, let's latch on that first, and then we can build to the higher levels. But because I think that's one of the reasons why I was talking to a young person the other day. He was talking about what could he do to try to get more, what can be done to try to get more young people involved or feeling passionate about these elections. And I think that's one thing I said to him is if we can make it real to them. And you make it real by showing them how your vote connects to what you're going through daily. And that's how you connect those dots. Like presidential election, as important as that is, you may not be able to see how that affects you when you walk out of your door in the morning. But if you can see how voting for your mayor, your county commissioner, your city council, your school board, those races affect you as soon as you step out of your house, or even when you're in your house, you know. So
yeah. I would agree.
All right. You saying that, I got another question, but I ain't gonna answer because we're gonna keep going on and on. I talked to Renee about that one.
Okay.
We always battle.
I had you know. No, it ain't no battle. It's something. It's something the way you just said it.
That
gives a light bulb in my head. Yeah, yeah. But I'll talk to you later on, Judge, and about that too.
All right. Well, I appreciate y'all having me on. This was a wonderful, wonderful time.
Yeah, it was good having you on.
Glad.
Great. I was looking forward to it.
You were able to join us today. I was excited. I love law because I'm in it every day.
Yeah, I knew she would like this.
Yes. Y'all keep me on your list. I love to come back.
Yes.
Okay, will do. Yes. Will do. All right, there you have it for another episode of the Impel Forward podcast. And remember, seize the opportunity to grasp your dreams.
Yes.